everyone, this is Rachel from Mini Ministry, wanting to share with you part of the Bible that I think it's overlooked, and I think it's time that we use it to proclaim truths within our own lives and not just from the time of the Bible. So here in John chapter 8, we meet how a woman is caught in the act of adultery. Now I'm just going to read this to you before I tell you some thoughts I have on this. It says, Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives, but early the next morning he was back again at the temple. A crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and taught them. As he was speaking, the teachers of religious law and Pharisees brought a woman they had caught in the act of adultery. They put her in front of the crowd. "Teacher," they said to Jesus, "this woman was caught in the very act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say?" They were trying to trap him into saying something they could use against him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. They kept demanding an answer. So he stood up again and asked, "All right, stone her. But let those who have never sinned throw the first stone." Then he stooped down again and wrote in the dust. When the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Then Jesus stood up again and said to her, "Where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you?" "No, Lord," she said. And Jesus said, "Neither do I. Go and sin no more." This is a passage that's familiar to many of us. We have heard of the story of the woman caught in adultery many times, but there's a couple things that were running through my mind last night that God was just bringing to light that I needed to share with you today. So first of all is the fact that they caught this woman in the act of adultery. It's not that they were told that she had committed adultery. She was literally caught in the act of adultery. There was no questionability here as to what this woman has done wrong. And that's the first thing I want to point out. And I think sometimes we forget that. We almost think that they just came and said, "Hey, this woman's done something wrong," but she was literally caught in the act. And I think that's an important thing to remember, where the state of mind is at for these people, both the Pharisees and for the woman, and for Jesus too in the story. The next thing is just that they are trying to trap Jesus. They have been trying to find ways to trap Jesus and to see exactly who he is and where he stands and to catch him up into saying something wrong, which of course Jesus won't, because he's Jesus. But what's interesting to me is how Jesus replies. Okay, I find it interesting he's writing in the dust, and it doesn't tell us what he's writing in the dust. I would really like to know what that is. I'd be really curious. But it says that they were trying to trap him, and he told them, "All right, stone her." For stoning was the legal reasoning for someone caught in the act of adultery. Being stoned to death was a perfectly viable option after you were caught. But he says, "Let those who have never sinned cast the first stone." My friends, this is a really amazing moment. Can you just imagine the Pharisees all surrounding them? And not just the Pharisees, there were probably people and other religious leaders all surrounding Jesus and this woman. And they have these stones in their hands. They are prepared because they know that the law demands a verdict, and that verdict is death by stoning. So they are prepared to carry out the law. And they know the law. And so they're prepared. They're going to stone this woman to death and have their vengeance in a way and just make it right, because that's their job. And when Jesus looks at them and says, "Okay, sure, you can stone this woman to death, but let those who have not sinned cast the first stone." Sometimes I think we are much like the Pharisees and those around the lady of adultery in this story. Our hands are filled with stones to throw at those that we feel are not leading a proper life. Not even just a proper life, just those that we feel better than, those that we feel that we are worthy of condemning. Sometimes our hands are full of these stones and they're just overfilling. All we want to do is cast them on people and tell them they're wrong. And we feel justified in that. But then our hands also get caught up with stones of our own guilt. Stones of things we've done wrong. Because sometimes we point out other people's flaws because we don't want to point out our own. See, we are all sinners. That's something you and I and every person you'll ever meet have in common. We're all sinners. We have all fallen short of the glory of God, as Romans 3:23 tells us. But see, here's the thing. Sometimes we deflect that moment. We We point out other people's transgressions because we don't want to admit our own failures and our own faults. So our hands get heavy with stones. But if we were truly honest, and Jesus was looking at us saying, okay, you're saying that this person's doing something wrong, but where are you? Have you casted out your sin and your guilt and your shame and all these things? If you have, then fine, but if not, how dare you condemn this woman? My friends, stones weigh us down. Our hands cannot be properly lifted to Jesus in open surrender if they're being weighed down with all the stones of others, stones of ourselves. We can't have open hands lifted to Christ. I was thinking this last night, laying in bed, just going around in my head, having these thoughts, that if we would just let go of these stones and walk away, how much lighter we'd be, how much freer our hands are. You know, when our hands are free, do you know what we can do? We can reach out and help someone else. We can truly surrender things to Christ. We can be the people, God, the hands and feet of Jesus that He intends us to be, because we have free hands. It sounds really simple, and it actually kind of is, but it's really hard for us as people. I think it's our natural fallen human tendency to want to point out others' flaws. Now, don't get me wrong, we are to judge righteously, and I think that's very important, to call out a brother or sister who is sinning. However, sometimes we get so caught up in pointing out other people's flaws without pointing out our own. The Bible tells us that before you sit there and try to pluck out someone's eyes, make sure you take out the log in your own, right? It's very easy to see flaws in others, but sometimes it's hard to see the flaws in ourselves. We also have to remember in the story exactly what Jesus said to the woman caught in the adultery. All right, they haven't condemned you, then neither have I. Turn and sin no more. Once you let go of those stones, my friends, stones of throwing at others, stones at yourself, once you let go, that's it. Let go. Turn and sin no more. And do not let those things define you. This woman in adultery, I can't imagine how freed she felt. Not only that she isn't alive, right, because she had every legal right to be stoned, but the feeling of being convicted of your sin, but then turning and knowing that you can walk away from that sin. You don't have to live that life. My friends, you don't have to live in sin. You have a choice. We are given this choice to turn from who we were and turn to Christ and to be freed from that. And it's an amazing thing. I think sometimes we like holding on to the stones because we want to be prepared. We want to have that argument ready. We want to have that good comeback. We want to be able to say, you're wrong, and just to spit it back at the person. My friends, that's not what Jesus wants. He wants us to be living the life so that we can properly help the others. We cannot help a person in adultery if we ourselves are walking in adultery. We cannot help someone who's struggling with certain things if we're doing those exact same things. Jesus' whole point in this is that we have to be aware of our sin and to turn from that sin in order to be help others to turn from their sin. And like I said, the Bible tells us we're all sinners. We all have sin in our lives. We're all tempted. But in order to have our hands free, we need to drop the stones. We don't need to be weighed down with them. So today, I want to challenge you and encourage you. What can you drop today? What is weighing you down? Or what stones do you have in your back pocket ready to throw at someone that you can just let go and leave in the dust? My friends, let's be people with empty hands. Empty hands that are open and willing for the Lord to use them for the kingdom of His glory. Because that's how change will happen. That's how revival will come. And that is how people will know that we are Jesus. They will know by our actions and our faith. So let's live a life, not one of condemnation, not one of throwing stones, but let's live a life of helping people to turn, to see the light, and to sin no more. And we ourselves need to be walking in that exact same direction. I hope you all have a great day, a blessed weekend. Until next time.